We're right now at Hidden City Cafe, which actually the film Monsters, Inc. was initially named Hidden City. And it was basically the Pixar commissary for a lot of us.
And it has a cameo in the film.
It does, yes. So it's about 3 blocks over to where Pixar used to be. I've gotten, I think, probably more questions than anything about the DVD release does the monkey work at Pixar? Because we had this monkey.
Well, the first thing you say, it's not a monkey.
It's a chimp.
Well, and we talked about it. We thought it would be hilarious. It's just inexplicably, we'd cut to a chimp.
just there.
We thought we'd have a chimp there.
Yeah.
We would never acknowledge the chimp. The chimp
would
wouldn't be a part of
always
this.
be there.
What we were talking about, it would
And
just
it wouldn't
be there.
always be there. It'd be sometimes, but not other times.
Well, and a lot of people wanted to come to work at Pixar. We were in the new hires that said, you know, the reason why I wanted to work at Pixar is you guys have a chimp.
I had to pitch a sequence with the chimp there, and I'm so, you know, hey, Sully, what are we doing? And I look over, and no one's holding the chimp. The chimp is going up and knocking its knuckles into the wall and knocking boards over. And I'm like, should I keep going for the camera? So I kept pitching.
There are a lot of pictures of Lee looking so happy.
With this chimp.
That was one of the best days of my life, I have to say. My earliest memories way back when were you going off to develop a movie. And it was really weird at the time because everything we had done between Toy Story and Bug's Life, we were doing as a team. And you were the first person to kind of break away from that group.
I was jealous because you guys would sit at this long table and you'd put newsprint down, like 10 feet of newsprint, and you'd sit with crayons and pens and pencils and just let your minds wander and just sit around and laugh and have fun, you know?
Every day we'd start by spreading it out and start drawing. Because initially the concept was, Pete, you go off and figure something out. I had no real clue of what I was doing. So we just thought of a lot of stuff. Trash Planet, which eventually became WALL-E, was one of them, and 1 or 2 other ones, but Monsters was the one that sort of landed.
The artwork over there was so cool. I just remember going over there and seeing, it would kind of, I think, coalesce into Boo then on a bed, and it was brilliant colors, and she had Rasta hair, kind of. Tons of cool artwork over there. And I remember thinking, that is one of the most imaginative things we've ever done, and the story was ripe with possibility.
Yeah, it was a different world, new world that we were going
to,
which
cool.
was really cool.
It was a big deal because we had made Toy Story, it was this huge film, and then you were going to be the first person, not John Lasseter, to direct one of the movies.
For me, becoming a director is probably the most taxing thing physically and emotionally that I've done in my life, you know, because it's a long race. It's like 5 years of uncertainty. Most of the notes we got were like, this is wrong, and I still don't understand your main character. And so I was sort of living in that world of like, the whole thing is gonna fall apart at any moment, you know? That's what it felt like. If you really care about it, it's hard not to take it personally and feel like the measure of the film is a measure of you as a person, you know, which is of course false, but it's kind of the way you feel about it.
People somehow think that we just like spit out a script and then make a movie.
Yeah.
And,
This one was thoroughly
crazy.
explored.
And why don't we do that?
And I remember that you guys were doing a teaser with Sully and Mike to get those characters out there.
There's nobody here. Huh? There's no kid. There's supposed to be a kid. There's no kid this scared. I'm panicking because there's a total lack of kid here.
Let's just check the schedule.
It's very embarrassing.
And you guys asked me to come on and cut that.
Which was a great thing for us just because it helped in the story department. It helped define those characters.
But we had John Goodman and Billy Crystal.
Right.
So that was the thing. It's like we really made that teaser sing. And it came out really good.
It did, yeah.
And as is wont with me, as has happened on several films, I started to get so enmeshed in the story and the characters and working with you that it was hard for me to leave. So it wasn't long after that, John asked me to come on to the movie and co-direct with you.
What's your favorite scene that you worked on?
Very early on when I first came on, we were kind of reworking the whole initial reveal of the scare floor and how the scare floor worked. And I had this idea, I pulled a piece of jazz off a big band CD that I had, and I cut this whole sequence of all the monsters coming in and out of their doors.
Oh, I'm feeling good today, Mikey.
And suddenly there was this whole cohesive feeling of the mechanics of everything.
And yet, when you really break it down, it's just all kind of exposition. Like, here's basically, again, all right, audience, here's why we collect Scream and how it all works, the mechanics of it, and that sequence made it just so fun to watch.
Yeah.
And it also made this world, which is out there, Monster World, just more accessible. It's just a factory that we're watching.
I don't think the scene is that much different now than it was at that point. It was like finding that voice of the film. But I seem to remember that being the beginnings of the kind of vibe we ended up going with score-wise.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm feeling good today, Mikey. Yeah.
Whoa! Attaboy, another dog coming right up.
My initial concept was they scare kids for a living, and everybody would say, why? And I'd be like, because they do. That's just the conceit of the film. You have to buy it. But then, you know, a lot of people, and rightly so, were poking at, well, what's the economics of that? How would they build a factory? How could they afford to set up this entire scare floor and the door vault and all that?
And I remember Andrew Stanton came forward with the idea that Scream energy is really what Scream is what powers their world.
Our city is counting on you to collect those children's screams. Without Scream, we have no power.
The other thing Andrew figured out that he was really troubled with was figuring out kind of the logic of all the different time zones all over the planet.
Okay, people, Eastern Seaboard coming online.
That just because it's nighttime in this one part of the planet, it's daytime on the other side of the globe, and figuring out the idea of these big clocks and the different shifts of
Exactly, all the
monsters.
shifts.
Yeah,
That was a great idea.
Just kind of scaring around the clock.
Our backstory was there were others, like Fear Co. and Scare Masters. They did the under-the-bed scares and the basement scares.
Right.
Monsters' big claim to fame was their patented through-the-closet door scare method.
That's right.
That Henry J. Waters the first invented. And so how many kids around the world have these closet doors? Therefore, there'd be this many scare floors to handle all the kids if they're scared maybe once every other week or blah, 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 blah. And then that's what led to the vaults. Like, where do they keep all these doors?
Right. Well,
That was pretty early on,
I think that's
that.
my favorite sequence.
Is the door vault
Yeah,
sequence.
the door vault sequence is so cool.
Well, as soon as we came up with that idea, kids, you know, we store the doors somewhere.
Right.
And we thought, okay, there must be a place. And just visualizing that, I was like, okay, that's going to be a cool scene.
Yeah.
We boarded it, and it was fairly cool.
Looks like we caught the express, pal.
Do you see him?
Straight ahead.
I seem to remember that the door vault being the first time we really shot that like a live action sequence where we just did a ton of coverage and we kind of mapped out big swaths of blocking and what the characters were doing, and then we just covered it from lots of different angles and found all kinds of
So
dynamic cameras and then
complicated
cut
and
it as
cool.
if we were cutting live action. I remember being so proud of it when it was done. It's just the camera work, but we see it. We see it. We know how cool it's going to be.
Yeah.
What was your favorite sequence, Bob?
Yeti's Cave.
Yeti's Cave. Well, you bring up Yeti's Cave. There's always a sequence in every film that you just can't get right, and the one where Sully and Mike meet the Yeti.
Welcome to the Himalayas!
But you got the characters at their lowest point.
Right.
They've completely broken up. They're angry at each other, and then how do you remedy that? That's the scene
had
that's
that
all
one-
about mending that relationship.
Yeah, he was like a closet therapist.
You know, I'm sensing a lot of anger in this cave. You guys gotta get over it. It's like my buddy Sasquatch always says. You gotta face it, embrace it, and erase it.
Look at that big jerk.
Mike and Sully, we literally then had them break off stalactites and start like fighting each other.
Oh, I can't wait to tell Bigfoot about this.
All you ever talked about was getting me back on the scare floor.
Literally, there were like 25 versions of this sequence that you
And
draw
we got to
over
the
and
point
over.
where we had approved it.
Well, we had to go.
And we
had to-
laid it out, and it was cut. We were a hair's breadth away from starting to animate the sequence, and we finally pulled the plug again and said, this is just not right. One of my fond memories was that we were getting ready to do that whole sequence where Mike and Sully are fighting, and they roll down the hill. And there was, I mean, in the drawings, we had snow flying and the wind buffeting them, and it was this crazy thing. And I remember the technical people called us into a meeting and said, okay, let's talk about what you really want here and what we can really give you. And I remember you and we were talking about what we were hoping for, but we knew it was just going to be technically nearly
'Cause it's like,
impossible.
okay, we want you to build the entire side of a mountain with all the plants and snow
and footprints and snow blowing and all this stuff.
it's a
And I
one-off.
remember that, and the technical people were all like really trying to tell us, well, we can't really do this, but this is what we can give you. And I remember they all went away, and it was a big lesson for me at Pixar that basically with the technical people, if you tell them, if you set the bar low and you say, well, yeah, I know it's really hard, I really don't think you can do this, that becomes a challenge for them.
Because we had signed off on, okay, he won't get snow stuck in his hair. It's just impossible at this point. You know,
No
we're
wind.
lucky to have hair at all. So yeah, no wind, and then in the end, of course.
But you watch it, it's about the believability. I mean, you believe the moment because it is just so real.
And it's the lowest low moment. It so drives it home. And I remember at the wrap party when that moment came on the screen and the whole audience just erupted in applause.
In honor of Yeti's Cave, every sequence that's now impossible to do is called the Yeti's Cave.
At Pixar, that's
Yeah.
right.
And Pete, you were asking me what my favorite sequence was,
Yeah.
and I would say, you know, the one that I had influence on that was really fun to do was Mike and Sully when they first wake up in the morning.
Get up, Sully!
I don't believe I ordered a wake-up call, Mikey.
Hey, let's talk.
I remember sitting at my desk and I got a call. It's like, you got 5 minutes to do an opening, and it's like, I'm on it. Hung up. Try this. Call. Yes, you came up. Woo, gave me a kiss, and then we threw it in. You know, it's like literally the fastest
that was
we
the
ever did.
character introduction. But we had the preview, and he used to be introduced by Waternoose, who says,
I need scarers who are confident, tenacious, tough, intimidating. I need scarers like James P. Sullivan.
and then you saw him, and it was confusing to the audience. They're like, who's that we're cutting to? Where are we cutting? What?
Right. The silliest thing I like in there is fight that plaque. Fight that plaque. Scary monsters don't have plaques. Scary monsters don't have plaques, Sully.
In the very early days before I was even on the movie, Mike Wazowski's character was totally different. I mean, you were playing him kind of more like a hip urban kind of sidekick. It wasn't Billy's voice at all. I mean, when you cast Billy, he
was a
became a
similar-
completely different character.
Yeah, he was a similar kind of guy who was very impetuous and instinctive, and just all he knew was what was right in front of him, and that was all important, and everything else just disappeared. And then as soon as he looked away, that was all important. When we came back from that story meeting from Disney, and they're like, you know, the execs there had said, come up with a buddy for Sullivan.
There was a Ricky Nerva drawing, and there was just this one-eyed guy in the back of that drawing, and something about him rang out. Do you remember that? Did you?
Yeah, we sort of settled on it, and then we split remember that? We split the story team up into pairs.
Right.
And we said, okay, we don't have a sequence, but you guys go off and basically do improv with Sully and Mike.
Which is
some
great.
situation.
It's a great thing to do in any of these movies. Just go play and see
Yeah.
what you come up with.
Right.
I remember Jason Katz, all he did, his
Jeff
one
Pigeon.
assignment, and Jeff Pigeon, was pick a tie. You have to wear a tie for the evening. What's that tie? And it sort of brings out the differences.
So I was like, I don't know, what about that? And Mike's just,
That one.
Oh, really? Because I wasn't even sure I should have put that one out.
Oh, you always do this. You ask me for my opinion and then you ignore it.
There's an early animation test. It was
Yeah.
kind of a looks test.
Yeah.
That had a totally different look than what the film ended up looking
Right.
like. And Mike had one eye in that, but he had no arms.
right. Because initially the concept was, I don't want this to look like a bunch of guys running around in suits, right? We got to take advantage of what monsters are and really push that. So we took a sphere with 2 leg arms, and so he would walk and then he'd grab whatever he needed, and you know, so in the end it became very limiting. And Sully at the same time had the tentacles.
Which was hilarious.
He was just
Yeah.
like, and there again, okay, no guy in a suit. How is he going to walk? It's going to
Right.
be different. And
Well, and that's another thing. How many Sully maquettes did we make?
And how many, like the background monsters, remember that? We had
Yes.
tons of drawings and different artists that we'd contacted
Yeah.
doing different design work. And finally, of course, like everything, it comes down to kind of economics of, okay, you have this many weeks to build 5,000 background characters. How are you going to do it?
Well, you don't. Which is why you go to Harryhausen's and it's all the guys from the scare floor hanging out in Harryhausen. So how did you arrive at John Goodman and Billy Crystal?
As we started talking about this scarer, who was this big tough guy, but sort of with a soft heart at the core, Goodman just sounded sort of like he had this weight to him and a strength.
And he had that much range as an actor.
Yeah.
Did Billy say yes right away when you contacted him?
did.
The deal with Billy, right, is that he was originally offered the part of Buzz Lightyear.
Right.
In Toy Story.
Right. Right.
I mean, John did a whole animation test. That was the last thing John ever animated
Yeah.
himself, right? John
Yep.
Lasseter animated an early version of Buzz Lightyear, doing some Billy Crystal dialogue from When Harry Met Sally. Of course, Billy now says that was the biggest mistake of his life, was not taking Toy Story.
But I love sports. Dodgeball was the best. Oh, yeah. I was the fastest one out there. Of course, I was the ball. But I was the ball. was the ball. Look, I'm a ball. Look at my head.
He loves that character, boy. You know,
Yeah.
he talks about Mike Wazowski all the time.
The other thing that we did, and I don't remember exactly how this came about, but Toy Story and whatnot, we had never recorded two actors together.
Right.
And a lot of people think we just get all the actors together and record, but of course, you know, because of everyone's schedules and everything, you can never get them in the room at the same time.
Right.
So we got them together. I seem to remember at least 3 sessions where
It was Billy's
we got
idea.
them together. Yeah.
All
It was
the
Billy's idea.
scenes,
He really wanted to work with
all the scenes where
John.
they had to interact, and you know, the whole concept was
Walking
they'd been
to
friends
work
since
and the
kindergarten
scare
and all that.
training and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, we actually had them together, and it's just like it takes it to a whole nother level. If you've got a chemistry there.
Yeah,
And
which
they
they
were-
Which we did.
And they were all about like who can out-funny the other one, and
Make
and
the
the-
other one
They
laugh.
were, but
Energy
they're
just
also
went up.
they also balance each other really well,
Yeah.
like the locker room scene before they go out on the scare floor. You know,
Yeah.
and stink it up. It's a wet dog. That all just was improv right then and there.
Hey, can I borrow your odorant?
Yeah, I get smelly garbage or old dumpster.
You get low tide? No. How about wet dog?
Yep, stink it up.
And Boo is so awesome. You can do her song.
Sailing comes along. Na, na, na.
Are you done in there?
She was initially like 7 or 8, and we aged her down to about 2. The girl that we recorded to do the voice was
Mary
the
Gibbs.
daughter of Rob, who is one of the story guys.
Yeah.
Working with Mary, I thought, okay, it's going to be like normal. I'll have my script, and we'll walk in, and we'll do the lines, and she'll stand there, and maybe I'll say them, and she'll parrot them. Well, she didn't stand still. She just ran around. So we ended up picking the microphone up and following her around, and I just tricked her into doing the sounds by playing with puppets or soft toys that wouldn't make a lot of noise, and so we couldn't really plan for, like, if you needed something specific, too bad.
Yeah.
You just had to kind of get what you got, and then you had the fun of finding all the little bits and pieces.
So should we talk about 9/11? Or
Yeah, that was quite late into the film.
We were in the middle of our sound mix the day that happened on 9/11.
So as
and
this-
I remember coming into, you know, we all found out about it, and but you know, everyone was like, well, do we go to work? Do we, you know, what do you do? But like a lot of people, we did end up going to work. I remember the prevailing feeling was that what we were doing was so trivial.
This day in history, September 11th, 2001. So intense.
Seems kind of bizarre to be making cartoons, you know.
It does.
It was really hard to get momentum and get excited about finishing the movie because there were such big things happening in the world. And the other thing that ended up being scary was that our movie was coming out basically 60 days after the towers fell. We just wondered, like, are people even going to want to go see movies? Right?
That,
Because
and
there
then
was such a dark
there were the-
mood in the world.
Even later was some of the scares about the anthrax.
Right.
And so here, a fundamental element of the film are these big suited guys, you know, walking around, and we're thinking, oh, this is a seduction.
But we've been making this movie for years, and this thing just happened to happen right at the end of making the movie.
we changed the scene.
Right, there
in
was
the
one
film.
scene that we
Oh, that's
changed.
right. We had a whole
Yeah.
we had a scene.
At the end of the sushi restaurant scene where Boo escapes from the restaurant, the CDA attack,
comes
they
in.
come in, the one guy says, all clear for decontamination, and as they're running away, Mike says, Sully, that could not have gone any worse. And the way it was in the original was
It was like a mushroom cloud in the
fireball
background.
of the restaurant being imploded, you know, which was hilarious. Like we showed it.
Papers
Oh, forever, yeah.
And then
thing.
it was
Suddenly
the
it
most
wasn't funny
unfunny
anymore.
thing.
Well, we ended up doing like a plasma kind
From
of
Toy
effects
Story
in the
2,
background.
right?
Yeah.
But we got as far away from an explosion as possible because it was just so
Yeah.
not something anyone
But even
wanted
then,
to
it was
see.
so uncertain. At the time, you're looking at it going, do we change it? Will this be funny again, ever?
The thing that I remember most fondly about that time is that when the movie did finally come out, we had so many people come to us and say, thank you. Thank you for giving me something we could go out and do as a family, you know, because people had, you know, sheltered their kids from the news, and again, the mood was so dark in the world.
And people weren't going
out. People weren't going out,
Yeah.
but they went out to see monsters in droves. We had so many people come to us who were so happy that we gave them an escape from everything that was going on.
It was escapist, but it's also talking a lot about how to face fears. And I think, especially with kids, you hear a lot that this is a way that, you know, Mike and Sully are a way that they learned how to not be afraid, you know, and especially at that time.
Oh, he's a happy bird.
And it definitely feels like a Pete Docter film to me. I mean,
Yes.
even, you know, and you animated that last shot, you know,
Yes.
of Sully's face, and I think that sums it up for me. Just how much heart that you put in this thing, and just how interesting this world was.
Well, I always wanted to do a scene in the film, but you know, the days are pretty packed, so it's hard to do. And that almost didn't come to be.
Right, we were arguing about whether Sully should go in and we see Boo or not, and then you had this idea that you ran with.
Showing it at the preview with an audience, it was just on boards. And I remember that being one of the points of contention that a lot of audience members
Well, that was one of the biggest notes.
We
They
want to go
wanted to
in.
see
We
Boo
want to
at
go
the
in
end."
with Sully and see Boo because they felt like it was working. That relationship was
Yeah.
really working.
Yep.
And so
Some
we got a
people would
lot
take
of pressure
that
for
note
that.
and say, well, then we should do it. We
Right.
should go see Boo because lots of people want to see that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of
But
discussion about it,
rightfully-
but I just knew that no matter what we did, it would never be as good as what was in people's heads. And it was actually a fairly simple scene to do, which is another
are
reason
always
why
the hardest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just an emphasis on the acting, and I think the story did a lot of the work for you, you know?
Yeah.
That by the time that he opens the door and his face lights up, you're sort of primed for that, you know, that the story had worked to that point, and it sort of resolves in a satisfying way that hopefully allows the audience to kind of create what happened next.
Boo?
Kitty.
That's why I like it. It's hope for the future of what's
Yeah.
going to happen next.
Yeah.
I cry every
Resolution.
time. I do. I cry every time.
Let's
I
try.
See that.
Kitty.
When I see his art.
I
The end.
The end?
Monsters
See
Inc.
more?
The Monsters
Monsters
Inc.
Yay.
The Monsters Inc.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Hey.